Hello, this is the Ipswich Vineyard Call Community Weekly Bible Study Summary. This is for 16th of June 2022, and this week we studied angels. As I said, this series is just what people in the group are choosing different topics each week, so we're not following a particular theme. So the word angel literally means messenger, and when you get a word that's kind of transposed from the original language and that has got a literal meaning in English, this sometimes means that different translations might translate the word differently. So I thought I would do a count. I did a search in Bible Gateway to see how many times the word angel appears in different translations. So, for example, if you search for the word in the New International Version, it comes up 290 times. If you search for it in the King James Version, it comes up 283. In the Good News translation, it comes up 356. And if you search in Young's literal translation, it comes up 0, because it will be translated messenger, because that is the literal translation. Interestingly, there must be other words that also get used for angels, because I noticed that Young's literal, the first occurrence of messenger, wasn't the angel guarding the gate of Eden from Adam and Eve, and that actually was the word cherub. So I didn't do a search on all the different words that might mean angel, but just to be aware that there are other words that we typically think of as applying to angels, and it isn't just the literal word messenger that gets used, but often in the context, translations translate the word messenger in the original Hebrew or Greek into angel to denote the being that's being referred to. Now also I thought I'd do, this is a little bit nerdy, but out of the 39 books in the Old Testament, I thought, I wonder how many contain the word angel. And so, as I say, it isn't necessarily all the synonyms for angel, but the books that have got the word angel in, this is actually the NIV, so, but I think it's that was pretty close to the King James. So anyway, do your own research if you want it for different translations, but just gives you a rough idea. Old Testament books referring to angel: Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Job, Psalms, Isaiah, Daniel, Hosea, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah. People who know a little bit of their Bible might notice that Ezekiel isn't mentioned there, and it's interesting when we come on to some of the subsequent studies that often passages that we think of refer to angel don't always use that word, but we our memories think, oh yes, that's about angels, because there's a famous vision in Ezekiel where he sees angels which have got very strange appearance, but the word angel doesn't appear in that vision. So it may be like the Good News does, and that's why it's got more references. I won't read you the list. In the study, I'm afraid I read the list of Old Testament books that didn't contain the word angel, but I'll do a similar thing just for the New Testament. 26 books in the New Testament, 17 out of 26 contain the word angel. So actually, more New Testament books in this comparison contain the word angel than Old Testament books, even though there are many more Old Testament books. So the New Testament books that contain the word angel: Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, Galatians, Colossians, 2 Thessalonians, 1 Timothy, Hebrews, 1 and 2 Peter, Jude, and Revelation. So really quite a substantial number. Possibly ones that might be of interest that don't. None of the letters of John, 1 John, 2 John and 3 John, don't contain any, and the letter of James doesn't either. So, but anyway, Yes, so as I covered in my earlier talk about in my earlier reference that Young's Literal doesn't have messenger, the Young's Literal Genesis 3:24 says, yea, he casts out the man and causeth to dwell at the east of the Garden of Eden the cherubs and the flame of the sword, which is turning itself round to guard the way of the tree of life. Just shows how literal Young's literal translation is, the sword which is turning itself round. I must admit I don't read a lot of that translation. So here's an example of, so Joshua was one of the Old Testament books that doesn't contain the word angel. But we often think that Joshua, when he's approaching the Promised Land, sees an angel. Well, what you might be thinking of is Joshua 5:13-15. And it says, now when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, are you for us or for our enemies? Neither, he replied, but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, what message does my Lord have for his servant? And the commander of the Lord's army replied, take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy. And Joshua did so. So that's actually quite an interesting reference, because we actually did look at angels in giving of the law, whereas there's a lot of New Testament references which talk about the law was given through angels. And if you read some of those passages, it just says, like God said. And we looked and saw that very often God's appearance is associated with an angel, or an angel, what's called the angel of the Lord. And so, for example, when God appears to Moses, it says the angel of the Lord appeared, and then after that it says God said. But the appearance is of the angel of the Lord, even though the voice that speaks is God's voice. And so it's sort of, that seems to be one characteristic of angels, certainly in the Old Testament, that when God appears and kind of delivers a message to somebody, it's the angel of the Lord who appears and God who speaks. And so that was why Joshua, take off your sandals, the place where you are standing is holy, very similar to what was said to Moses in the burning bush. And you might remember in Revelation, John in Revelation talks about bowing down and worshipping the angel, and the angel there says, no, don't, I'm just someone like you. And so that kind of denotes what we're going to come across, which is different classes of angels. And the angel of the Lord seems to be like an appearance of God himself, whereas there seem to be other angels, which we'll come to, who just seem to be like heavenly beings. So one of these is Raphael. This is from a intertestament book, the book of Tobit. So a number of books were written after the Old Testament and before the New Testament, and so in some Bibles you'll get them in the middle as the Apocrypha. And so Tobit is one of those books. So if you've just got an Old Testament, New Testament Bible, you won't have Tobit. But if you can look it up online, you can get Bibles that have got it in. So as Tobit and Sarah were praying, God in heaven heard their prayers and sent his angel Raphael to help them. He was sent to remove the white film from Tobit's eyes so that he could see again, which is Tobit 3:16-17a. And then we get other mentions of angels with given names. So in Daniel 10:13, the angel prince of the kingdom of Persia opposed me for 21 days. This is Daniel writing. Then Michael, one of the chief angels, came to help me because I had been left there alone in Persia. So there's Michael as a very specific angel that comes to help Daniel. And then there's another reference in Daniel 10:20-21. He said, do you know why I've come to you? It is to reveal to you what is written in the book of truth. Now I have to go back and fight the guardian angel of Persia. After that the guardian angel of Greece will appear. There is no one to help me except Michael. Oh, so I think this is Gabriel. So there's Gabriel and Michael in Daniel. So I don't think it makes it very clear there, but I think it was it was Gabriel who was talking, and then he says, there's no one to help me except Michael, Israel's guardian angel. And then another reference in Daniel 12:1, not even the chief angel Michael did this. Oh, I got this scripture wrong, and I should have corrected it. This is from Jude. This isn't from Daniel 12:1. Sorry. In Jude it says Michael had a quarrel with the devil, and he argued about who would have the body of Moses. Michael did not dare condemn the devil with insulting words, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." So I got that wrong in the Bible study. Daniel 12:1 obviously must be a reference which I wanted to use, and then I also wanted to use the Jude reference, and I put the two together, but I did realise at the time and just didn't remember to change it for this. Sorry about that. Another reference to Michael is Revelation 12:7. Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, who fought back with his angels. And then here's another reference in Daniel 8, this time 15 to 19, and this is Gabriel. So it says, I was trying to understand what the vision meant, when suddenly someone was standing in front of me, and I heard a voice call out over the Ulai River, Gabriel, explained to him the meaning of what he saw. Gabriel came and stood beside me, and I was so terrified I fell to the ground. He said to me, "Mortal man, understand the meaning. The vision has to do with the end of the world." And while he was talking, I fell to the ground unconscious. But he took hold of me, raised me to my feet, and said, "I am showing you what the result of God's anger will be." The vision refers to the time of the end. So anyway, the point of those passages was that there's specific angels that have got names. And so Tobit has got Raphael, and then Daniel has mention of Gabriel and Michael. And then other books of the Bible, such as Jude and Revelation, also have reference to Michael. So this is like another class of angels. There's angels that have got specific names. And in various other non-biblical books, I think things like Enoch and Jubilees maybe, that various other books have names of angels. But there's a few in the Bible, so we do kind of get the principle that there's specific angels who have got names. So there's various classes of angels, and one class are called the Watchers. So in Daniel 4, Daniel's got a lot of angels really. Daniel 4, 13, 17, 23, there are references to the class of Watcher, the Holy One. The term is introduced by Nebuchadnezzar, who says he saw a watcher, a holy one, come down from heaven. He describes how in his dream the watcher says that Nebuchadnezzar will eat grass and be mad, and that the punishment is by the decree of the watchers, the demand of the word of the holy ones, that the living may know the Most High rules the kingdom of men. So that's a reference in the Bible to a group of angels called holy ones. Now, another passage, this isn't one that I thought, oh yes, this is definitely an angel one, and when I looked it up, the word doesn't actually appear. But this is when Elisha, the prophet Elisha, there's like a war going on, and I think there's like a huge enemy army, and Elisha's servant is very afraid. And so Elisha says, "Don't be afraid," Elisha answered. "We have more on our side than they have on theirs." Then he prayed, "O Lord, open his eyes and let him see." And the Lord answered his prayer, and Elisha's servant looked up and saw the hillside covered with horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. That's 2 Kings 6, 16 to 17. And as someone in the group pointed out, we assume that there's horses and chariots are accompanied by other things. It isn't just horses and chariots. So we always think that this is sort of like the Lord's army, and it's got angels and things kind of handling the horses and handling the chariots. So another aspect of angels occurs in Genesis 6, 1 to 4. So this is the time before the flood. And it says, when people had spread all over the world and daughters were being born, some of the heavenly beings saw that these young women were beautiful, and they took the ones they liked. Then the Lord said, "I will not allow people to live forever. They are mortal. From now on they will live no longer than 120 years. In those days, and even later, there were giants on the earth who were descendants of human women and heavenly beings. They were the great heroes and famous men of long ago. So that's Genesis 6, 1-4, as I said. So this idea becomes quite elaborated on in extra biblical literature, that there were angels who came down and had sex with humans, and that as a result there were sort of extraordinary beings born. So it says these were the great heroes and famous men of long ago, and also calls them giants. And later on there's reference to these giants, Nephilim. I think it's the literal word. And I think, like, when Israel are about to go in the promised land, I think they say, oh, the Nephilim are here, you know, they're giants. And so in books, I think like Jubilees and Enoch, this idea of sex between angels and humans is like really condemned. And in fact, I think in some of the books it says that's why the flood happened, because there was this sort of mixture of humans and of heavenly beings and you know, angels and humans, and that wasn't, God didn't like that. And they talk about strange flesh. So I think the strange flesh are the beings that appear that are born from intercourse between humans and angels. So an appearance of angels occurs to Abraham in Genesis 18, 1-5. It says, the Lord appeared to Abraham in the sacred trees of Mamre, and as Abraham was sitting at the entrance of his tent during the hottest part of the day, he looked up and saw 3 men standing there. As soon as he saw them, he ran out to meet them, bowing down with his face touching the ground. And he said, sirs, please do not pass by my home without stopping. I am here to serve you. Let me bring some water for you to wash your feet. You can rest here beside this tree. I will also bring a bit of food. It will give you strength to continue your journey. You have honoured me by coming to my home, so let me serve you. So it's Genesis 18, 1-5. And there's no mention there, of course, of angels. So again, you know, we think, oh yes, these 3 angels turned up. But in fact, it seems possible, like 2 of the angels maybe were like regular angels, and 1 angel was like the angel of the Lord, because there are kind of references in the passage to Abraham having like seen God or served God or talked to God. But in the subsequent passage, it does refer to 2 of them as angels. So in Genesis 19, 1-2, it says, when the 2 angels came to Sodom that evening, Lot was sitting at the city gate, and as soon as he saw them, he got up and went to meet them. He bowed down before them and said, sirs, I am here to serve you. Please come to my house. You can wash your feet and spend the night, and in the morning you can get up early and go on your way. Now, of course, what we know happened is that these angels go to stay the night with Lot, but the people of Sodom want to have sex with the angels. And so, you know, God, again, doesn't like this, and Lot and his household have to flee. The angels kind of blind the people of Sodom so that they can't rape the angels. And so, you know, Lot's family get away to some extent, and Sodom's destroyed. So again, you know, we get these 2 great destructive passages in Genesis, one of the flood and one of Sodom and Gomorrah, and they both seem to be related to this sin of strange flesh, where angels and humans are having sex. And you know, there's a big destruction in the flood, and there's this other sort of destruction with Sodom and Gomorrah. So that's that. Strange creatures. So some angels don't look like humans. It's clear that the angels we've seen so far basically look like humans, because it will say like a man appeared or 2 men appeared or something. But in Ezekiel, It says Ezekiel 1:4-9. I looked up and saw a windstorm coming from the north. Lightning was flashing from a huge cloud, and the sky... Oh, sorry, I missed a bit out. So Jude, in the book of Jude, Jude 1:6-7, the angels kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, that he has reserved in everlasting chains and darkness and judgment, even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner gave themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh. They set forth an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. So Jude actually makes a reference back to Sodom and Gomorrah being destroyed for this sin of going after strange flesh, and does make reference to angels themselves being punished for having sex with humans, basically. So that was another little bit. There's Jude kind of as a follow-up, and some people argue other references to sort of like sexual sin in the New Testament, references to angels and humans having sex. So, but I don't really want to spend too much long on that. I just want to, because we're doing angels, I just want to mention it. So I don't want to spend too long on it. Okay, back to Ezekiel. So at the centre of the storm I saw what looked like 4 living creatures in human form, but each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight, and they had hooves like those of a bull. They shone like polished bronze. In addition to their 4 faces and 4 wings, they had 4 human hands, one under each wing. 2 wings of each creature were spread out, so that the creatures formed a square, and with their lips touching. When they moved as a group without turning their bodies. So that's Ezekiel 1:4-9. So that actual whole first section of Ezekiel is really strange and goes into lots of detail about these strange creatures that Ezekiel sees. And usually commentators say, well, these maybe are like some class of angel, some type of angel. They're obviously not like human angels, although they do have some human aspects, but they have hooves like a bull, they have wings, 4 faces, or what have you, So really it's just sort of to reference that some visions of angels see very strange creatures. There's a sort of slightly similar one in Isaiah. It says, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord. He was sitting on his throne, high and exalted, and his robe filled the whole temple. Around him flaming creatures were standing, each of which had 6 wings. Each creature covered its face with 2 wings, and its body with 2, and used the other 2 for flying. They were calling out to each other, Holy, 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 the Lord Almighty is holy. His glory fills the world. The sound of their voices made the foundation of the temple shake, and the temple itself became filled with smoke. That's Isaiah 6:1-4. So, there's sort of other references a little bit in the New Testament, in Revelation, about sort of somewhat strange creatures, but it's difficult to say if they're always angels, I think. But anyway, sometimes there's visions of creatures that people say are a type of angel that looks strange. So we ought to cover fallen angels. Now, funnily enough, although in Paradise Lost it makes a big deal about Satan, in the serpent in the Garden of Eden being Satan, the Bible itself doesn't really make that reference. It just talks about the serpent. And there aren't really that many references to Satan in the Old Testament. There are a number in the New Testament, but the Old Testament only has a few. One of the places that Satan appears in the Old Testament is in Job. So right at the beginning of Job, it says, on another day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them to present himself before him. And the Lord said to Satan, where have you come from? And Satan answered the Lord, from roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth on it. Now, I've read that in Judaism, Satan is an angel like any other angel. he has a role, whether that's a given name, because I think Satan means the accuser, so it may just be, it's sort of like a title that he's like the chief prosecutor. So if you imagine a sort of a court of justice, and the heavenly host are looking down on humans, Satan is like the prosecutor that always tries to present the worst possible interpretation of what's going on. And so it's as if there's sort of this debate, or there's this discussion about, is somebody a good person, or are they a bad person? And Satan is not opposing God, he's obeying God's will, but God's will is that Satan should put like the case for the prosecution. And so in the case of Job is described in the beginning of the book of Job as being sort of very good person, but Satan says, well, he's only good because things are going well for him, and if things weren't going well, then he would curse God. So he's not really good, he's just good because God has blessed him. So anyway, the rest of Job is basically a test to see whether that accusation proves true, or whether Job remains faithful in spite of difficult circumstances. So there's also another passage in Zechariah 3:1. It says, Satan rose up against Israel and incited David to take a census of Israel, and he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right side to accuse him. So again, not saying that Satan was an enemy of God or opposed to God. It's really like he's testing people. Satan is used to test people in this sort of, well, what I'd read was the Jewish way of understanding Satan. They don't see there being fallen angels or Satan as being the devil or as being like an evil force. He's obedient, but he tests people to see how, like, what their worth is, and so that's like a role that God assigns him. So where does this idea about Satan being a fallen angel come from? Well, there's a couple of passages in the Old Testament which people do cite, and I will cite them. Ezekiel 28, 11 and 16 to 17. It says, you were blameless in your ways from the day you were created till wickedness was found in you. Through your widespread trade you were filled with violence and you sinned, so I drove you in disgrace from the mount of God, and I expelled you, guardian cherub, from among the fiery stones. Your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendour. So I threw you to the earth. So the passage itself initially seems to be about an earthly king, but then sections of the passage, like this one, refer to cherubs, refer to being expelled or thrown out. I expelled you from the mount of God, as the term. So it may be that there's sort of a more complicated way of understanding things here, because remember in Daniel it says like the angel of Persia or the angel of Greece, and there's this idea maybe that the sons of God, that like there are like angels or sons of God which represent different nations, and they've kind of got, like, in a sense, a heavenly reality and an earthly reality. And so there's, maybe it's this sort of idea that there was this particular kind of cherub angelic being that represented this kingdom, this earthly kingdom, and maybe there's like a relationship between the way that kingdom behaves and the sort of standing that Son of God or angel has in this sort of heavenly assembly. Nowhere does it go into it in a huge amount of detail, and I should also mention what I said at the beginning of the Bible study. There's not actually a bit of the Bible that says, let me tell you all about angels. they just get mentioned, they just get referred to. You have stories, and in the stories angels appear, and so, you know, and in writings, so in Ezekiel, for example, we've got this passage here, seems to be talking about an earthly king, but then there's sections of it which sounded like it's talking about a heavenly being. So some people say, oh, that's talking about Satan. It's probably, to me, sounds a bit more complicated than that, that there was sort of this idea of heavenly beings that represent nations. But anyway, that's usually taken to be a reference to like the fall of Satan. Then there's another passage, Isaiah 14:12 to 15. How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth. You who once laid low the nations, you said in your heart, I will ascend to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly, on the utmost heights of Mount Zaphon. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High, but you are brought down to the realm of the dead, to the depths of the pit. So Isaiah 14:12 to 15. So again, it's this idea of morning star, which is, I think that's where the term Lucifer, which means morning star, comes from. You have been cast down to earth. You said in your heart, I will ascend to the heavens. You know, this idea of in Paradise Lost, of Satan trying to be like God and kind of rebelling against God. The sort of thing that's reflected here, this idea, I will make myself like the Most High. Again, I think probably it's this notion of like an angelic being that represents a nation, which we saw in Daniel. That seems consistent with what we saw in Daniel, that there's angelic beings that represent nations, and again, you know, this angelic being was cast down because of the behaviour of the nation they represented. But you know, people say that is another reference to Satan. That's Satan falling, and if you read the full context again, it looks like it's about an earthly king, but there's sections which sound like it's referring to a heavenly being. So it's how you want to take these passages, which seem to have some elements of talking about an earthly kingdom and other elements which are talking about a heavenly being, and whether you want to say, well, they're all references to Satan, or they're references to the heavenly being that represented that nation. It's up to you really how you want to interpret it. I just wanted to draw attention to this idea of fallen angels. Isn't really very prevalent in the Old Testament. There's only a few mentions of Satan, and the passages that people normally ascribe to the fall of Satan are quite ambiguous when you read them, so I think there's something to be aware of. There's another reference to Satan. 1 Chronicles 21 verse 1, Satan rose up against Israel, and I quoted that with the Zechariah one. That's the Zechariah one says, then he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right side to accuse him. And 1 Chronicles 21:1 says Satan rose up against Israel and incited David to take a census against Israel. So again, examples of Satan really kind of testing the mettle of people, and either being an accuser or encouraging somebody to do something bad just to see whether they're a good person or not. Right, that concludes the fallen angels part. Again, types of angels. There isn't really a bit of the Bible that goes into a lot of detail about let's explain angels now, but subsequent authors like to try and come up with ideas about angels. And I read this, I think this is possibly from Wikipedia, that I think it was like Pseudo-Dionysius, who was an early Christian writer, comes up with this structure of angels. The highest orders would be seraphim, cherubim and thrones. Usually, I've heard of the first two, I didn't realise that thrones might be a reference to a type of angel. The middle orders would be dominions, virtues and powers, and the lowest orders would be principalities, archangels and angels. bit of a surprise that archangels seem so much lower down there, but this was just, early Christians had liked to write some speculative stuff about angels, and this was what one of them said. As we said, Michael and Gabriel are recognised in, they're recognised with Christians and Judaism. Also, they're recognised in Islam. It says in the bit I read, they're recognised as archangels, so that would be where they're situated. And according to the bit we saw earlier, archangels not getting too high a standard there, not up with seraphim and cherubim, but there we are. So some Protestants consider Michael to be the only archangel. Raphael, who's mentioned, as I said, in the book of Tobit, is recognised as a chief angel in the Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches. Gabriel, Michael and Raphael are venerated in the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church on different days. The named archangels in Islam are Jibrail, which is, I guess, Gabriel, but a slightly different way of pronouncing it. Michael, which would equate to Michael. Israfel and Azrael. I don't think we covered them, well, we didn't cover them earlier, and Azrael does get mentioned in the Bible. It's an unusual name and people speculate about what it refers to. Jewish literature, such as the Book of Enoch, also mentions Metatron, which I wasn't familiar with, as an archangel, also called the highest of the angels. So obviously, again, there must be some debate as to whether archangels are up there with the highest or not. The acceptance of this angel is not canonical in all branches of faith. Some branches of faiths mentioned have identified a group of 7 archangels, but the named angels vary depending on the source. Gabriel, Michael, Raphael are always mentioned, and other archangels vary. Another one is Uriel, Uriel, who gets a mention in 2nd Esdras. The other thing I was just going to finish with is in Revelation, at the early chapters of Revelation, there's a series of letters. If you ever want to do a clever Bible quiz, you can say, did Jesus write any letters, or is there anything written by Jesus in the New Testament? Because, of course, most people will say no, but in Revelation there's these 7 letters written to the churches, and it looks like they're dictated by Jesus, and it will say, to the church in Ephesus, right, or to the church in Philadelphia, right. And so there's this series of letters, but the way it works is it doesn't just say, like, to the church in Smyrna, it will say to the angel of the church in Smyrna. So it's almost like the way in the Old Testament there seemed to be this idea of an angel of Persia or an angel of Greece, there being some sort of an angel that stood in for the nation themselves, and Michael being the angel that fought, as it were, for Israel. It seemed that there was an idea in the New Testament churches, in the early Christian churches, that there was an angel for a particular church in a place. So, it might say to the angel of the church of Ipswich, right, or, to the angel of the church of Colchester, right. So, anyway, you can read those early chapters of Revelation and see what you think. But, the idea really is that each angel gets a message for their church, and it's got some good and it's got some bad, and the different locations get different mixtures as to whether they get a lot of praise or not very much. But that's sort of like another take on this idea of angels representing a group of people, like Michael being the angel for Israel. It may be part of the sort of notion of the 7 churches mentioned in Revelation, each having an angel, that could be extrapolated to be more generally true. Right, well, I think I shall stop there. That's our coverage of angels. Tried to kind of whiz through a bit about what the Bible says about them and what people have also said to kind of, it's always a bit speculative. Like I say, there isn't really a thing that where you can just go to a bit of the Bible and it will tell you all about angels. Angels get mentioned all over the place, and therefore it's invited people to try and kind of piece together all the bits of the jigsaw and to try to say, oh, this is what we think about angels. And so there's a lot of different ideas floating about as to how, do we each have a guardian angel, that sort of thing. But it's it's an interesting topic, and I hope you enjoyed it. So thank you very much.